Hello everyone, Republic Jim here on this kind of foggy, drippy, late spring morning, back for a talk related to preparedness. Specifically, I wanted to talk about how lack of preparedness relates to search and rescue missions. I've been a member of search and rescue in Ferry County since 2012 and been on a fair amount of missions. Not a huge amount like some of the bigger, more populated counties, but enough to see some definite patterns and see that almost all missions that we go on are because of someone's lack of preparedness. That's kind of a generalization. You know, it's not always the case. Sometimes somebody can do everything right, be all prepared, and still just get disoriented or somehow lose the trail or get injured. But those ones are pretty rare. Most of the time I've seen that it is unpreparedness that is the root cause of someone getting lost or needing to be rescued. And there's sort of three general categories that those fall under. First one would be lack of information. People don't have the proper preparedness when it comes to knowing trail, you know, where the trail goes, how far it is, how difficult it is, what the weather conditions are supposed to be like. Just going out, whatever they're doing, and not really being aware of what they're getting into. A real common one with that is like with a loop trail where people go out for a day hike and they want to walk around the loop and they don't realize how long it will actually take. And so then they start out early afternoon and suddenly they find they're not back to their car yet and it's getting dark. And, you know, that's just a very typical scenario, and which kind of leads into the next category, which is lack of preparedness with gear, because a lot of those people also don't take along any sort of light source or warmer clothing for when it starts cooling off in the evening. And you know, this category is also very common, like with hunters. They'll go out for an afternoon hunt and figure they're just going to be gone for a couple hours, so all they take along is their gun and, you know, maybe a radio or something, but they tend to leave everything back in camp because they want to travel light. And so then when they find that they're lost, they don't have light, they don't have water, they don't have a compass or a GPS, or they don't, you know, no way to make fire or shelter or anything, and suddenly it becomes much worse than what it would have been if they'd been prepared. And you know, the warm and waterproof clothing is also, it's very common. People just go out when the weather's nice, don't realize how quickly the weather can change in the mountains, and suddenly they're getting soaked and cold, and you know, they're just not prepared for that scenario, and then suddenly find that they need to try to get help. Another thing that used to be really common was lack of map or GPS or compass or anything, where people would get misplaced and not have any way to figure out where they were or try and find their way out. That's become a lot less common now because everybody carries along their cell phone, and you know, typically they have those capabilities on their phone. But then what we're seeing a lot more of now is people whose cell phone battery is going dead. They manage to get through and call for help, but their battery's almost dead. They have to keep their phone turned off and only use it periodically to call for help. They don't have any way to charge up their battery in the field. You know? They don't take along a battery bank or solar charger or anything like that. So that's becoming a more common type of unpreparedness there. And then the third category I see is just lack of physical preparedness. People overestimating their level of conditioning and then finding out that it's a lot harder hiking around in the mountains. It takes longer to get where they're going because of that. They get tired out and have to take a lot of rest. Or they just lack the balance and coordination and stuff for some of the more challenging trails. They could slip on loose rocks or just slippery, wet ground and fall and get hurt. You know, it's just a lot of people tend to think that they're in better shape and more athletic than they are because they remember how they used to be. And so often they're just not prepared for the type of trail that they're trying to tackle. And so if they had that level of physical preparedness, it wouldn't be a problem. Or if they had the information about the trail to realize it was too much for them, then they would be prepared for that also. But anyway, with these three categories I've mentioned, they're not mutually exclusive either. They typically, I've seen where people fit into a couple of those categories, if not all three. And you know, one just leads to another and makes it worse. So like when they lack that information and end up getting lost or overdue out in the woods at night, and then they're also unprepared with their equipment, then they spend a very cold, miserable night, and sometimes, unfortunately, people don't make it just because of that. So, you know, like I said, there are those occasional ones where they've done everything right and they just get lost anyway. And I was on one search mission like that where the lost hunter showed up right as we were arriving because he had spent the night, had everything that he needed, and then in daylight was able to navigate his way out. And you know, that's the rare exception though, where somebody is prepared and they deal with it the proper way. But in most cases it's definitely one or more of those categories where if people would just take the time to be prepared, then search and rescue wouldn't have anything to do really. But you know, we're happy to go and help out. But I would highly encourage people to really consider those categories and try to make sure they check off all the boxes and all three of those, and be prepared when they're heading out into the woods or wherever they're going. So hopefully that's been some interesting and useful information. I think that's about all I have for now. So this has been Republic Jim. I'll talk to you later.